random chunk from the archives.
Robert, welcome to breakfast.
Breakfast?
Well,
it's before my time. Thank you.
We sit here in a cinema. The seats behind us. Do you get a kind of a buzz from just being in a cinema? Does it take you back? I don't know, when you sat there as a child, or
when I was a kid, I grew up in a lower working class neighborhood. In those days, we're talking about the end of the Second World War. You go to a theater, and for 40 cents American, you would see maybe sometimes 2 features. You'd see a newsreel that was Pathé News about the war still going on in the front. You saw a cartoon, maybe 2. You saw a serial, Flash Gordon, Wonder Woman, Tarzan, and you saw a Pete Smith short. That's what you got, and you took it for granted because that's what you got. And so years later, when I was a filmmaker myself and in the business, and I had to go screen the film in different places around the country, we have a test screening. I noticed that there was multiplexes now. The concessions were kicked up sky high. That's where they made their money. And then you had one film, and then you had maybe 6 trailers blasting your ears off, advertising new films that are coming. I thought, well, what's happened to the experience of seeing film in such a different way? And that led to the idea of the Sundance Festival showing films, and then Sundance Cinemas, which we now have 7 of. I wanted to recreate that experience where film was more respected.
And tell me, does your passion for Sundance, which you founded yourself, does that imply that you have a frustration about the bigger movie industry, the Hollywood-style movie industry, that you think something's wrong in the Hollywood system?
I don't think so. I think I see it more as an add-on. I think the film business has always been a great business. And the films that were made in the 40s, the 50s, and the 70s, when there were more independent films incorporated into the overall menu of films. So there were the big movies, there were the musicals, and the big action films. When I saw it starting to shrink in the 80s and become more centralized, so it was just more following the youth market where the money was, I could see that some of those films that I like to be interested in weren't going to get made anymore. And that's what led me to focus on independent film.
Ready? No, we'll jump. Like hell we will.
You mentioned a kind of golden era of cinema. Some people see it that way, and they link your generation of actors, yourself and Paul Newman, and that era of stars. They see them as being different somehow. When you hear that argument, what do you make of it?
You know, to be honest with you, the way the business is now with everything known, to the point where it's almost boring, I'm not sure I would be attracted to the business in today's climate. I don't know that I would be wanting to go into a profession where everything is known, where you don't have some privacy to live a life that's normal, or live a life that's kind of more real in your mind. I try to do that by having a place that's away from where the film business is, and I retreat to that place. Come in, it's almost like flying into enemy territory, dropping bombs and leaving. You know, you want to go in, do your work, and get out.
Can I ask you about your latest film, The Company You Keep?
No.
It's
Action and passion sounds like something a friend of mine used to say.
No.
Need to talk to you, Big J.
Go to hell.
The film you're talking about was really about the radical movement in our country called the Weather Underground, which became radicalized by young people against the Vietnam War. They were against the war because there was a draft, and they didn't want to be drafted to go into a war they didn't believe in and be part of killing people they didn't want to kill, including their own. And so they rose up against it. I totally support that. I did then, and I do now. I totally supported the idea of trying to raise a public voice against the powers that be, particularly if they've never been in war. We saw that in the Iraq War. Had Cheney been there? Had Bush been there? No. So who are they to organize something where so many lives are going to be lost and against dubious claims? Well, so back then, you had young people trying to go against it, and what happened was they weren't getting the traction they were trying for, so they turned to violence. And when a movement that's attempting to have a public voice of its own has to resort to violence, it's kind of the beginning of the end, and then that movement will die out.
Mr. Grant, I'm Ben Shepard, Albany Sun-Times.
I don't really have anything to say over
You don't know what I'm going to ask you yet.
Do what?
I said you don't know what I'm going to ask you yet.
One of the lines in the film is, I forget which character said it, when you get to my age, a certain age, you always have regrets. Do you have any?
Well, sure, I think we all do. I think we all do have some regrets. It's what you do with them. You know, do you dwell on them? I think regrets are just part of living, but I think regrets, you take a regret, rather than having it be a regret, maybe a mistake made in the past, you try to convert it to knowledge. You try to convert it to something that will let you grow.
Can I ask you about Walk in the Woods, the Bill Bryson book, which
Yeah.
you're going to be now making into a film?
Yeah.
Originally, the idea was that you and Paul Newman would do that.
That was the idea. That was the hope. And when I took it to Paul, I think the age difference between us was beginning to show up, and he felt that, and he was concerned about physically being able to do it. I still wanted to do it with him. I thought it was a perfect thing for he and I to do after the other two we'd done. It became clear over time that that wasn't going to be possible, and then Paul passed away. So, but I believe in the project. I love the project.
And Nick Nolte is
Yes.
to be in the film with you.
Yeah, and he and I are the same age, and we can share some of the same past.
Gatsby. He had a grand vision for his life since he was a boy.
I'm gonna fix things just the way they were before.
Just you and me.
The Great Gatsby is being remade, shortly to be released. What do you think when you hear that?
First of all, I think that Gatsby is just one of those timeless books. It's because of the character, because of the mystery behind the character. I think it has a timeless appeal. I think Gatsby that I was involved in was not the first, not even the second, I don't think. And so this is another one. I'm sure it'll be a good film. Wonderful actors, I think Leonardo I like him a lot, and Carey Mulligan I think the world of. I think it'll probably be a good film, and why not, you know?
Real pleasure to meet you.
Nice
Thank
to
you
meet
so
you.
much for your time.
You're sure welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.